Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Graying Jedi podcast. I am Urza Master. Joining me as always, Jedi Master Psyllium Maas and Lord Uther. Gentlemen, welcome back to the Jedi Council chambers. Here in our 53rd episode, we conclude the Mandalorian series with The Return. A monumental piece of Disney Plus entertainment. If you've not seen it, go out to Disney Plus, subscribe, and get yourself involved, because this is very much worth your time. Jedi Master Psyllium Maas, tell us more about Mando and The Return.
Hello, Jedi Master Urza Master, Jedi Master Lord Uther, all of our Graying Jedi fans. We have reached chapter 24, which at the time we weren't quite sure if this was the end of the road for our beloved Din Djarin and his Padawan foundling, Grogu. Now we have a little bit more clarity, as there will not be a fourth season of The Mandalorian. This journey has come to an end after 3. However, we will be getting some big screen adventures, as well as the promise of popping up in some other Star Wars properties. Don't forget, Season 2 of Ahsoka and the upcoming Skeleton Crew both take place in the Mandoverse, as it's colloquially known. So, could we have a surprise cameo like they used to do on The Facts of Life in Different Strokes, where you'd have a zany sitcom character show up for an episode on a network? It's possible. But we know for sure that we will see Pedro Pascal and that lovable little green scamp on the big screen in 2026, right around Memorial Day weekend. Mark your calendars now. The Return was this episode, chapter 24. It aired April 19th, 2023. The director was, once again, Season 3 showrunner Rick Famuyiwa, and the writer was Jon Favreau. And that's literally all the background you're going to get, because, folks, this is just a 47-minute action extravaganza. It might as well have been an extension of the previous chapter, The Spies, because this was just pure 100% special effects, cliffhanger, confrontation, and then at the end we got all of our resolution and so forth, which we'll discuss. But it's just action, action, action. And my favorite moment was R5 versus a battery of mouse droids, because we've never seen mouse droids take an aggressive posture before. And suddenly here's what they were. And it turns out they're wildly ineffective. But that's okay, because that's what Star Wars fans want to see, is R5-D4 battling a whole corridor full of irate mouse droids. I mean, we had TIE fighters swooping. We had Din Djarin in a desperate fight for his life. We had Grogu engaging with Praetorian guards. We had what I initially thought were Snokes in a can, but it turns out it was just Moff Gideon clones there, Project Necromancer. Don't forget, he told the Shadow Council in the previous chapter that he had no interest in cloning, and yet here he is now with back to tube after back to tube with his own genetic hellspawn. So clearly Moff Gideon knew to lie. Gentlemen, you can sing out your praises for what you have. We got big screen effects worthy, and we've had that the entire series run, but this was just a triumph for ILM and all of the digital effects houses who worked on this to show off. You would have had no idea that this couldn't have held up on the big screen based on what we were seeing. It never felt small. I think the one note that I had is, it's interesting when you think about television shows going as far back as Magnum PI or The A-Team or any of those shows from the glorious 80s to present day. I always think it interesting when a protagonist of a show is shown in some instances and context to be almost invulnerable. Do you remember the first episode, chapter 9 of The Mandalorian, in which Din Djarin and Grogu go to that underground fight club with the Gamoran guards? And seemingly the entire arena turns on Mando. including the Gamorrean guards, and he disarms and disables and fights off every single one of them with ease, gets the information he needs from the criminal underworld, and successfully walks off without barely a scratch. And it's easy to make your hero look invincible, but I always find it fascinating when the writing and the story dictates that they are not. So why was Mando overpowered by these super troopers? Like, why was he so helpless? Bound and dragged through the halls and so forth, and weak. And it's just fascinating because that's what the story needed to be. So Grogu could come and save him in the IG-11 body show, which was, again, tremendous. But it's kind of arbitrary. Like, if Mando is, he's got his wrist cannon and his flamethrower, and he's got all of these things and tools, and he always seems to get out of a jam until the writers need him to not get out of a jam. And that, that's just how Hollywood and entertainment works. But it always catches me when it's like, boy, this guy can survive anything yet. The three super troopers, managed to overpower and overwhelm him. And don't give me this, it's just because they've all got Beskar. Din Djarin's been around the block. He knows a thing or two about how to do it. And he eventually prevails, but he pays a steep price. The stuntmen were really getting worked out here in this episode. But gentlemen, like I say, there's not really much to focus on in terms of story. We do have a resolution of the Mandalorian saga, a relighting of the Great Forge. That whole sequence kind of reminded me of Peter Jackson's Return of the King at the end, as we, Aragorn takes the throne of Gondor and leads all men and so forth. We have Din Djarin working out with the New Republic, sort of what his new work schedule is going to look like. And we do get a Dave Filoni cameo. If you glimpse right behind Carson Teva, there he is with his cowboy hat at the bar. And then we get a fantastic final shot. And in fact, when I first saw it, I said to my wife, I said, I think that's it. I think that this is how they're going to end it. They could do a season 4. They could have Mando and Grogu going off and doing more, quote, bounty hunting, rescue missions and the type, but they're just going to flash ahead to a bigger storyline with bigger stakes on the big screen. So, ergo, we'll just assume off camera that they got to have many more adventures together. But having them with their home on Navarro and the little frog pond and so forth, that's a wonderful place to end. That's a wonderful conclusion. And I don't feel cheated. I don't feel like we were deprived. I don't feel like, oh, they cut it short. A lot of shows will break your heart when they end on a cliffhanger, say for 25 years, and don't tell you if their protagonist is going to not be possessed and get out of a otherworldly plane of dimension. And then, they go ahead and resurrect it 25 years later, and Twin Peaks fans rejoice. But a lot of shows will just get canceled or finished without giving you that satisfying closure. And I don't feel like we had that. I think we had a 3-season storyline here. I think there were many threads that were tied up very neatly, and there was still room to explore if they wanted to, and they're just going to choose to take a different road. But I don't think by any means we will have seen the last of some of these characters. So, gentlemen, how did that adrenaline rush return grab you?
All right. Season 3 wasn't that bad. And I can't even remember if I was really laying into season 3 that much, or just that episode.
That one episode.
Which name we shall not say, the name of that episode. It was just that bad that it kind of dragged me down there. I'm waiting. I'm waiting to. What I liked about this episode is I was hoping Grogu was gonna just start going Yoda in a sense, and was going to kind of take the Praetorian. Am I saying that right? Praetorian Guard. Yeah, take them. Kind of take them down. I did like that and we're also seeing him grow in power, right? Because at the end, he puts that huge force shield around them and saves them from dying.
From a capital ship explosion. I mean, this is not some like. I mean, it's an inferno.
Right. So I think that was absolutely that was just very, very cool to see. Giancarlo is amazing as Moff Gideon. Is he been typecast as just being a great baddie? I don't know, because I think he's going to be Professor X, or there's talk of him being Professor X, which I could see him doing that in some upcoming X-Men stuff. But I think this episode is everything that you wanted it to be. I'm not going to lie. Kind of wanted Luke Skywalker to show up at some point. I think I just want him to show up in every episode, just because I still give me back my Luke Skywalker is the way I keep feeling about that. And I'm just going to throw this out there just because. Could Moff Gideon still have a clone somewhere somehow? But then again, he's not a Force user. I don't know. He is probably done for. But I just did kind of like the thought of that maybe somehow he could still be around, because he was such a great bad guy. Beautiful episode. I'm all about Bo Katan and Djarin, eventually at some point being together. My question is, when we see them in their movie, what kind of Grogu are we going to see? Are we going to see a Grogu? Like, is it going to be 5 years in the future? Is it going to be 6 months later? Like, what are we going to see? How well trained is he going to be? What's going to happen? I'm going to throw this out there. I hope they aren't going to the planet Hoth. I don't want that, because I know in the previews that we've been seeing, or the trailer that we saw, that looked like they were on some kind of an ice planet, and everyone's wondering if it's Hoth again. I really hope it's not. I saw your nose cringe on that, so I would like to hear your thoughts on that. But anyway, great episode. Maybe I didn't like the ending that much, because I don't want Mando to end. Like, I didn't want the series to end in a sense. But very touching, to say the least. So, Urza, I want to know why you made a cringy face when I said I don't know if I want it to be on Hoth, because why do we have to keep going back? We talk about this being to me, it's supposed to be this massive universe, but we keep winding up on Tatooine. I don't need to go back to Hoth. I don't know. Or go ahead.
We just haven't seen a lot of Hoth. I gotta be honest. Like, there's more to Hoth than meets the eye. I'd like to go back to Hoth, because I feel like if you're going to tie this to canon, right? I feel like you have to revisit something. It doesn't need to be like super impactful. It could be like, oh, there's a small Empire remnant on Hoth, because why would anybody ever suspect that they would reuse an old Rebel base for an Empire base? Well, we wouldn't have suspected them to be on Mandalore. And that would be a great environment for maybe you to start the movie. Grogu and Mando are on Hoth. It's like, oh, it's Hoth. Oh, man, that's awesome. And they're riding Tauntauns, or, they're riding a Tauntaun into a small base or something, or I don't know. I think it could be done well. And again, I don't think it should be more than a nod. Like, I wouldn't want to see the whole movie take place on Hoth. But I would be intrigued to see them, feature Hoth a little bit, because I like the planet. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was unique, and maybe there's parts of Hoth that aren't total frozen wastelands, right? Like, maybe it's like Greenland, and there's a little bit of green there somewhere. Maybe there's porgs. Who knows? I hope not, but you never know. As far as this episode goes, I'm with you. I didn't really want it to end, because I genuinely love the series. I love these characters. I'd love to see another season. They could make this a longer running show, in my opinion, and it wouldn't need to necessarily go to the big screen, because, like Psyllium Maas said, this is a big screen quality episode, and they don't all have to be this way. You can have your ship in the bottle episodes, but this one was epic. I mean, this was, I think, what I wanted to see in episode 9, that shall go unnamed. And we sort of got it with the giant, all the ships show up at the end, but then it got to be kind of microcosm where it's like, oh, I'm going to be running on the outside of a ship and somehow save the day. And it's like, you can kill some of the good guys off in the final battle. That's okay. You know, they don't all have to survive, especially the annoying ones like Finn. And Poe Dameron. They can kill him too. Like, and Rey. And really, that whole cast is
yes, the entire sequels could just go away.
I liked.
I like The Force Awakens.
I like The Force Awakens. And there are bits and pieces of the other two that, like, if you put them in different movies, they would be good. Maybe one that follows a good storyline, extending from The Force Awakens. You know, something cohesive and well written, maybe.
And I'm sure we'll talk about this at some point, but let me just explain my Force Awakens real quick. And I don't mean to take away from the role that you're on right now, but I'm just going to tell you why. Here's why I feel like it was the perfect transitional piece, because you are giving the nod that you should have given to the original trilogy, and you've got the characters there, and you're able to hand the baton off in a sense, and you could have moved on in a different direction, and that's what I felt the movie was going to do, and it didn't. I'm sorry, no, that's what I felt it was going to do, and that the next two movies were going to help. And yes, we'll have this whole conversation one day, but I just want to throw it out there that that's why I liked The Force Awakens. It gave the nods it needed to give, and then it moved on. Anyway, back to you.
I can't wait to talk about those, because there are definitely things about the two movies after The Force Awakens that I liked a lot, and then there's a whole lot of things I didn't like at all. All right, they were never going to please all the people. That's the thing. Is like, it's okay. It's okay that I didn't like some things.
But isn't that why you love Mandalorian, though? Because it goes back to being Star Wars. That's why I say that this series saved Star Wars. Yes, we're still getting a couple of mentions here and there. We got a Luke Skywalker that everyone wanted. And you cannot tell me that people did not want. That's what people wanted to see moving forward from the trilogy. That's what they wanted to see, was a Luke Skywalker like that. Like, we finally got him, right? Yeah. To me, this series saves everything, because what if this series would have tanked? Would we have any more Star Wars right now? Would they have sat on it for another 20 years, hoping they could have resurrected it again? I truly don't know. But I think that's one reason why we love it so much. And I just spoke over you again, and I apologize.
That's all right. I actually agree. I think that Mando did save Star Wars in a way, because it tells a unique story. And I've been advocating the whole time, they need to get away from the Skywalkers, tell the other stories, even if it's set during the Empire, like Andor. Look at Andor's success is exactly what I'm talking about. These are stories that they're rooted enough in the Star Wars we all know, love, and grew up with, that you can tell those same stories in that same era, use all that same nostalgic stuff, like a Darth Vader, who they have a completely digitized James Earl Jones voice, thank goodness, rest in peace, that they could carry that character on forever, literally forever, through AI and digitization, and it'd still be fine. I'm not going to complain. Well, maybe I will. Who knows? But I think that what Mando does nicely, and this episode in particular does nicely, is it has enough newness, and it's unafraid to make the heroes fallible. And that's something they just didn't do with Rey. And that's what really irritates me, is that throughout the entire time, I never felt that Rey was ever truly in jeopardy. Luke Skywalker, for sure, thought there were a few times he was going to get crushed or zapped or blasted or something. Hell, they froze Han Solo in carbonite. Like, there was real stakes there. Now, granted, looking back, watching them now, it's like, it doesn't feel that dramatic. Of the era, it was still like, oh my gosh. They can do way more riskier things in shows like Mando and it be successful. And in this episode, I fully anticipated we were going to see some of our favorite Mandalorians kick it. Paz Vizsla being a big one. Like, we saw him die. If you can kill Paz Vizsla, you could kill Mando. You really could kill Din Djarin. I mean, I thought that might happen. Or the Armorer. I mean, or any of the other, like, recent edition Mandos that it's like, I mean, we're just sort of liking some of these dudes. Is the guy crashing the ship going to ride it down like the Titanic? Because that would have been friggin' epic. But of course, he does a smart thing, and he's like, all right, close enough. And it worked. And yeah, the whole force shield was freaking incredible. I was in tears. Like, I actually forgot I hadn't watched this episode. Like, I watched the one before it, and I think I just assumed it was the last episode. I'm like, wow, what a cliffhanger. And I never got around to this one. I don't know how or why, but here we are. And I was like, this is so great. Because it absolutely nails everything that it should. It gives you that heartfelt moment where Grogu saves Din Djarin. It gives you that heartfelt moment where, Bo Katan is about to lose and delivers that ultra great line that Mandalorians are stronger together. And I was just like, oh, it ran chills down every part of my spine. And then, seeing Grogu get involved in the battle, and the freaking rocket blaster battle in the sky was dope. It was so good. Seeing the TIE fighters attack the big cheesehead ship, fantastic. Everything about this was big screen quality for free with a Disney Plus subscription. And the story, like, it wraps it up. All these loose ends come together. You get Carl Weathers again. You go back to Navarre. You get the baptizing scene, with Paz Vizsla's, son.
Yeah.
And you get Din Djarin adopting Grogu, which, I mean, that's where Waterworks came on for me right away. That was so incredibly touching. And, just seeing that whole transformation and that acceptance, like all those Mandalorian tribes coming together, and relighting the forge, it was just like, holy crap, what a payoff. And just, and almost spaghetti westernish finish with the
at the end, yeah.
Yeah, going off into the sunset, retiring to their ranch, but knowing that their adventures aren't really over. That's the part that I liked, because, you look at A Fistful of Dollars, right? You get to the end of A Fistful of Dollars, like, wow, what a cool character Clint Eastwood is playing. If this is the only movie we see this character, and it's like, I'm good. But at the same time, you could set up like a whole lot more movies. Kind of like you could have a trilogy of Mandalorian movies, or you could have 4 more Dirty Harrys. Like, it delivered on everything I've ever wanted from a Wars movie or show.
Can we revisit Paz Vizsla's death? Because I think there's something to be said for that. He starts off as someone we don't like, and beautifully written becomes someone that we love, and then sacrifices himself. Right? They have the guts to kill him off. It's not like Glenn's death in Walking Dead, or even some of the deaths that we see in Game of Thrones, where we've always liked the character, right? Like, the character, we've liked him from day one, and they die, and it's like, oh my gosh. But here's someone you couldn't stand at first, gets into our good graces, and then does the ultimate thing and sacrifices himself for everyone. I think that his arc, in my opinion, masterfully written. I think it was masterful. So I know that was an episode before, but I had to revisit that.
And even after, because in the first season, he helps save Din Djarin. When Din Djarin steals Grogu from the client, it's Paz Vizsla and the Mandos who step up and give him the cover to escape. But then when they reunite in season 2 with the armorer, and he's got the Darksaber, Paz Vizsla challenges it. Like, he's always been kind of at odds with Din Djarin. It really isn't until this 3rd season, and they save his son, that he finally gets on board and says, yes, you're one of us, I can respect you, your brother. And then he's gone far too soon, as you say. But yes, it's not like a case where they're like, oh, now he's a good guy. Like, that resistance to Din Djarin's just how he was raised and all of that, and taking off his helmet and then having to, get rebaptized in the waters of the Forge. That's great. It's like they didn't just make it this one-dimensional, like suddenly he's a good guy. So that was good.
Yes.
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 So real quick, okay. Here's my question before we, and I know we're all gonna give this episode, obviously. What legacy characters do you think we're gonna see in their movie, if any? Let's start with you there, Psyllium Maas.
I don't think we're going to see the Landos and the obviously we can't see the big three anymore. They're all dead. I mean, 3PO and R2 could still make an appearance. Obviously, they're immortal. I think you're going to see characters, maybe Mon Mothma, because again, we're still in that era. But I think you're going to see more like the Thrawns. I mean, again, I can't say for sure that Thrawn is in the Mandalorian Grogu movie. I know he's going to be in Filoni's movie. I know that Sigourney Weaver is playing a major role and possibly a villain in this film. Like, they won't say what she's doing, but she's a big enough name where she may be the big bad. And does she have a connection to Thrawn or not Thrawn? Or, I mean, it's very hard to say. So I don't think we're going to see those, but I think we'll see some of those characters on the side. They can do an Admiral Akbar. I mean, I think the gentleman who played his voice is gone, but they can do a Mon Calamari. They can do, like I say, Mon Mothma. They can do, the cast of Rebels. Basically, anyone who is in Ahsoka could easily show up in the Mandalorian Grogu movie because it's the same time frame. So. Ahsoka could show up in the Mandalorian Grogu. Bo Katan could show up. I mean, I think that's what you're going to see.
Urza?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Mandalorian cast for the most part. Carl Weathers obviously not going to be in it, except maybe in passing reference, or they might have a funeral scene just to honor him, which I think would be really cool and poignant. I think we might see a Luke Skywalker because he's still alive at this point. I definitely think we're going to see an Ahsoka. An Ahsoka appearance probably stands to reason at this point. In what capacity, I'm not sure.
Is this a gateway movie to the Thrawn trilogy?
Yes.
Or is it the start of?
I think this is a one film. I mean, obviously, if it's wildly successful.
I do too. I don't think it's right. It's a one-shot Mando film.
Right. But if it goes global and $1 billion, which is like the new benchmark, if you can make $1 billion worldwide, then they're making more of it.
I think it does.
Yeah.
I think it's going to hit that mark, and I think whatever the plans are currently for what happened to Mando and Grogu come the Thrawn trilogy, whatever the plans currently are, I think if it earns $1 billion, we see more Mando after it. I think Mando and Grogu survive somehow. I don't know if it's necessarily a given, but I can see that.
Because you don't need Pedro Pascal in the movie. You just need his voice. He literally can phone it in. Yeah. Literally can phone it in. Right?
Yeah. Which is great.
So I'm wondering, again, if this is the gateway. Well, unless he takes his helmet off. Yes. But you could have him adhering to the tradition and never taking his helmet off.
The problem is Pedro Pascal wants to get paid like he's on the set for phoning it in. That's usually the...
But I mean, can you argue with that though? Because we've said so many times, just through his voice inflection,
No, I'm just saying that to the bean counters, it's like, well, why are we giving this guy $12 million and he's doing this on the weekend on an iPhone? Like I'm just telling you how Hollywood is, really set up.
Yeah.
I can tell you now.
I could see that being an issue.
Yeah.
And I think that's the only issue you get with Mando moving forward is Pedro Pascal's going to want to make money, which is fine. He should be paid handsomely because he does a phenomenal job. But the bean counters are going to be like, no, we're not paying an actor that much for his voice. Like, who do you think you are, James Earl Jones? And I guarantee James Earl Jones was like, I don't care how much money I make.
I can't take it with me. Yeah, so that's
Right. So I do think that he does take his helmet off at some
yeah.
point because they're going to require him to be on set, there present, probably mock up or something to get their money's worth. I think they're going to get it. I mean, frankly, I think this is probably the new franchise. Ahsoka's going to do fine. I think the Thrawn storyline is promising and will do good things. Filoni is not going to go wrong with it. But I think if you're going to get bang for your buck out of Mando, you got to have his helmet off. You got to have him. You got to have him doing more than he did this season on set physically. He might not have to be there the whole time, but he's going to have to be there enough that they feel like they're getting something. I want to see the Bo Katan love story. I want to see Din Djarin and Bo Katan becoming the king and queen of Mandalore. I want to see more of Bo Katan. And the armorer. I think these are such compelling characters. It would be a misstep for Disney to not use them in more things. And I know, Emily Swallow and other, related sort of supporting characters, they don't need to be more than 10 minutes, 15 minutes in the movie. Like, they don't need huge roles to really be important, right? They can be there and 2-3 sequences make a huge splash. And it's not just fan service. Like, they can drive story. And we've seen it all throughout the series. So the other side of it is if they do a standalone movie where it's their adventures, they could easily do another season of Mandalorian where they come back to Mandalore and you get a Mandalorian Grogu who finally gets baptized. I just think there's so much to it. There's so many more stories to tell. I'm excited, but I'm going to kick it off with a Kyber Crystal rating. And needless to say, I'm drinking all of the green Kyber Crystal juice. By the way, if you haven't had Gatorade Zero Apple Burst, it's a new flavor. It's really good. I'm not getting paid to say that. I actually just enjoy apple-flavored drinks. Psyllium Maas, how about you?
Every quarter, the Disney issues a special badge to their employees that ties into a theme. So we're going with Spring 2023 Mulan and Mushu, and that is a nice deep green there for the Disney badge. And that just celebrates not just this episode, but the entire run of Mandalorian. Disney Plus took a gamble in 2019, just as the pandemic was upon us. And it looks like even if you just had the results of this one show alone and the marketing and the merchandising and the plush toys, that they bet on the right Grogu. So that was, I am grateful, humbled, and appreciative of the high quality Star Wars adventures that we received and should continue to receive going forward.
Look, I, in my heart of hearts, thought there was only one amazing duo. So this gets a Kevin McHale, Larry Bird green because Grogu and Din Djarin might be just as great as this combination was right here.
McHale? Grogu's McHale in your analogy, right?
I'm gonna have to say yes.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to say yes to that. So absolutely wonderful.
Well, we appreciate everyone joining us in that galaxy far, far away with the Mandalorian and Grogu. Our next adventures here on the Graying Jedi podcast will take us back to that galaxy far, far away. Where will it take us? You'll have to subscribe to find out. Drop us a comment, let us know. How did you feel about the conclusion of The Mandalorian on Disney Plus? And if you feel so inclined, like and share out this video so everyone can enjoy the Graying Jedi podcast. It's free to subscribe, it's free to share, it's free to like, and you are free to tell us anything you think anytime. From all of us at the Graying Jedi podcast, may the Force be with you.